Espy. If each one of you can share your name, what do you do outside of here, and why are you here tonight? Briefly. Okay.
Thank you all for being here. My name is Marvin Espy. I work as a fine artist, and I own an art gallery in New London on State Street. Very beautiful gallery, I might add. But you know, I'm here now because this is a critical time, not just for Black people. This is a critical time for all people everywhere. And I was for a while saying in America, but the implications of what are happening now is beyond me being Black. It's beyond our differences culturally. It's about what kind of a world we want to be a part of. I don't believe that for a while I was looking for where I could go just to live a quiet life. And I don't believe there is a place. But if there was, I don't know that I'd be at peace living a quiet life, knowing that there would be so much suffering going on. So I'm here because there need to be these conversations so that they lead to action urgently.
All right. Dr. Prince.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
I appreciate people speaking back to me. My name is Dr. Derval Prince. I am originally from the Caribbean, so I'm from the U.S. Virgin Islands. Kind of thing that's unique about me is though I am from the U.S. Virgin Islands, my father is British, my mother was French, and my abuelita, she's Latina, she's from the Dominican Republic. So I tend to see things interestingly different. I've transitioned here to Warren, Connecticut from the Caribbean. I've been here for the past 10 years, where I served at Metro College as both CIO and Director of Information Technology. So it's been about 25 years total that I've been in higher education. It's something that I'm definitely passionate about. And overall, one of the biggest things for me is understanding that change may not always happen in your generation, but it does not make you less of a change agent. One of the things I love to say is there is comfort in complacency, but there is no growth. It's easy to stay still, stay quiet when things are comfortable, but you can't grow. Ships stay in the harbor, but that's not what they were built for. It's one of those things that we have to move. You're not going to always impact a change that you're going to see right now, but it doesn't make that change any less impactful. For me, being here is just about not just sharing my story, but sharing the stories of my fellow panelists, and also seeing the different changes of people that's in the audience. Sometimes you really don't know what is going to happen until you're in the space. And also sometimes you, like Mr. Booker, you're able to make the space for other people to be heard. It's not always about your voice, but that of the next generation, those of the people that may not be able to be as articulate or may not be able to say the things that they think they want to say in a space that they want to say.
Mr. James Hodge.
Good evening, everyone. I'm James Hodge, owner of Hodge Wellness. I do personal training, massage therapy, and I'm a licensed community health worker for the state of Connecticut. I do all these things because I have always just been a servant. It's the most comfortable thing ever. As a man of God, it's just the easiest thing ever to serve a big boss that has just unlimited resources. So I come to you to just share, to be a part of the community, and that's my thing. Like, the first tool I'll always give to any crowd is just to say, breathe, right? You're always gonna breathe, and you're going to notice that breath, whether you're upset, you're breathing really fast, or you sleep, it's a slow thing. And if we do breathing mindfully, we can affect some changes. So with these beautiful brothers up here, I hope we can accomplish just that.
Wow. Wow. Thank you, Mr. Booker.
I know, he got real quiet, Mike.
We're waiting for you. We're waiting for you to introduce.
Lee Metoyer. The youngest on the panel.
You got this, Lee.
Yes, I'm Lee Metoyer.
Tell people who you are.
Probably, yeah, something unique about me is that I'm originally from Louisiana, and my family is Creole. So, yeah, I'm sort of a fish out of water up here. But I work as an analytical chemist with one of the pharmaceutical companies up here. And I say I'm here tonight just to share at least part of my experience, my story, as a part of the wider conversation that needs to be had, even continued on. Because just as the other gentleman have said up here, we've gone complacent, and there's no growth. There's nothing that's happening. Nothing that's really happening for all of us to move forward. So I'm here tonight just to have these conversations and just continue to move forward.
Thank you. Mr. Rod Coleman.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I want to thank the Groton Library and Mr. Booker for asking me to be here tonight. My name is Robert Coleman. I've been living here for off and on for about 54 years. Just told my age probably, right? And I was a product of a military family where we moved all over the country. So I was able to deal with different cultures, different people of color. And that worked for me to explore other people's background. It put me to the advantage to be able to help and talk to other people. But at the other side of it, I didn't understand why people look down on other people because of their skin without even getting to know them. I went to 7 different high schools. I went to Barrington College, took some classes at UConn. Took a job at the state of Connecticut, operating the River Drawbridge. I did that job for 34 years. I just recently retired. I wrote a book. I started dabbling a little hobby. I wrote a children's book on the drawbridge.
Mr. Coleman, can you show your book, please?
It's titled Reach for the Sky, Mr. Grip.
Reach for the sky.
It's for sale at the Mystic bookstore. Now, I'm working on another one, a more animated one, primarily for kids, and it will have lots of people of color, and we want to be part of that book. I want everybody to feel that they belong, and that's my goal. My goal here tonight is to learn. These guys, some sharp guys, and that's my primary goal, is to learn the knowledge that they have. And maybe I can use some of their knowledge in my next book, and I can help out some younger gentlemen.
Gentlemen, I just want to say it's a privilege and honor to be here tonight and to moderate this panel with you all. The first question goes to Mr. Marvin, Mr. Dr. Prince, and James. How can we redefine Black masculinity in a way that allows for vulnerability, self-expression, and emotional depth? That's something that you see throughout the book. especially black masculinity. When you're looking at how it's talked about throughout the book, Don't Cry for Me. So I'm gonna go to Marvin on this question first. How can we redefine black masculinity in a way that allows for vulnerability, self-expression, and emotional depth? What comes to your mind, Marvin?
Okay. I think two things briefly. I think masculinity through our African American lineage was one of subjugation of fathers. So I can only imagine that either landing here and then being separated from family or separated on the other side of the pond, or being born here and knowing that you could be sold to another plantation owner, or that your children can summarily be taken, sold, traded, inherited. And I was thinking about what that means for a father. And if not, I don't mean just, I shouldn't say father, what that means for a parent. If I'm a slave on a plantation, how do I parent my young man to survive in a world where he at 5, 7, 12, 15 can be taken from me without any choice of mine, and then have him survive? And I think I'm only speculating that part of that would be that from the time he's born, I've got to make him independent. And I have to say, from my personal experience, while my parents were married when my sister and I were born, I don't know much about their relationship, my mother and father's relationship in that time, but they were divorced by the time I was 2. But I had a relationship with my father. But it was not, it was a very independent, take care of yourself relationship. No help at college, no appearances at ball games, not much by way of instruction, teaching. And I, of course, as a young man and into my adulthood, I had a lot of resentment about that. In hindsight, I imagine he got something dramatically less than what I got. So he may have given me what he knew to give me intentionally, or may not have known what to give me, but I imagine that our lineage would provide for a father to give their sons a detached independence, and probably for self-preservation too. I still gotta live with this master that I'm with, and I still gotta go out and do this work. And if I break down and fall apart when they take my family member, then I'm not gonna survive any of it. That's one speculation.
Thank you.
I hate to, but I'm only gonna do that.
So going to Dr. Prince, how do you redefine black masculinity in a way that allows for vulnerability, self-expression, and emotional depth?
So for me, I think I go back to my parents, right? And I mix a little bit of that with what happens now. When you talk to any younger person, one of their big catchphrases is "life be life," and it sounds weird, but you sometimes cannot find a better way to define life and what's happening now than simply saying it is what it is. Like, life just simply be lifing. And a lot of times we define masculinity as we've observed it. So we, as parents, you parent the way that you probably was parented. And then they got your parents got parent, they learn to parent the way how they were parented as well. And sometimes, as one generation turns to the next, they often pass on the blessing, but not necessarily the lesson. So you get the benefit of what happened, but you don't know why you got that benefit. So we now get to the space where we almost feel that it's obligatory. So we have to have this just because we exist, and there's no effort that needs to be put into it. But trust me, life is hard. It is hard. If you do it right, it's hard, and you don't have there's not always a retrieval for it. Sometimes there is not a downhill, there is just always uphill both ways, and it feels like that sometimes, but that's what it is. And then as you try to navigate it in the space of masculinity, one of the things that you're always taught is to be prepared. You never know what's going to happen, so always be prepared. And sometimes with that level of preparation, it comes this facade of I have to turn off everything in me that's emotional. I cannot show any sign of weakness, because if I do that, that then makes me vulnerable to everything else that happens. So as men, sometimes we don't, I do it a lot, so I'm preaching to myself what I'm saying it to you, because we don't have an emotional filter. That's not how I think we are made. James may say something differently, but to fix that, we turn off everything. So the effect that I have with one situation is the same effect that I have with the next situation. I deal with losing a job the same way I deal with losing a friend. I shut it all off. That's how we process things. And one of the superpowers that a man has is to think about absolutely nothing. It's a superpower, I promise you. When we sit in silence and you say, what are you thinking about? The answer is absolutely nothing. And we are proficient at it. It's a space that I think we've lived and set up houses and bridges, and that's how we are. Right? And then I'll give you this one other thing before I move on. As I look at how we process things, I process things in 3 different ways. I process things, first of all, as 70-20-10. 70% of the time, I process things based on what is. This is just the cards that I'm dealt, and this is how I'm going to play. 20% of the time, I focus on what if. That possibility of what's a potential of something happening. And 10% of the time, I focus on what's next. Within that 20 and that 10% of the time, that's 30%. And I don't know if y'all been in school long enough, but 70% of passing. So that 70% of the time I focus on this is my day-to-day life. This is just what it is. And I have to process things that way. And that's kind of how we function. It's we want to be proactive, but the way how sometimes life comes at you, you have to be reactive. And that's sometimes a space that we have to live in most of all, you know. And as men, we are trained inherently to be protectors. We are fixers. So don't tell us a problem just for us to listen. That's not how we're built. That's not how we're built. We're built to fix the problem. So we hear you say, and we say, what's wrong? And you say nothing. That's what we believe. There's no, let me ask you again. That's how we are. So understanding all of those pieces as we look at ourselves being men and what we define it as masculinity, is taking all bits and pieces of this thing, being prepared for that next step, understanding who we are currently, filtering out the things that in life that we don't have any control of. And that's just how we have to process in this world that we live in.
Wow.
So, James, what is your perspective on black masculinity in regards to vulnerability, self-expression, and emotional depth?
To redefine black masculinity, first you have to separate it from sexuality. Because being a man is like, I'm just going to be very scientific and say X and Y and XX. So once you get to that point, it's just your actions. It's owning your truth. It's who you are. So the vulnerability is, can you be truthful to yourself? Can you love yourself to tell the truth about how you feel? Self-expression follows that, right? Because if I can be truthful with myself, I don't have a problem with anybody else, because I'm already truthful with myself. And then the emotional depth is there. Because if I'm upset with you, I'm going to tell you I'm upset. If I'm not, I'm going to tell you I'm not. But I tend to think when we redefine masculinity, it has to be on the basis of what did you say and what did you do. It's I'm judging you on your actions. And at the point in time you change those actions, you change. And each of us gets to define for ourselves what we want to define these things as. But for that masculinity part, yeah, like I define a man, that masculine part, as you doing what you said you would do. And if you can't, you said that you couldn't and you had a good reason why. But that's where I would leave it at. Just having your word and that be your pride.
Right, absolutely. So this next question is directed to Rod and Lee. And in regards to masculinity, what messages about masculinity do black men receive from their families, communities, and media? Because we see a lot of different images, we hear a lot of things from our family members, community, and how do these messages impact their emotional well-being? Rod.
Well, I think it's kind of tough because I came from
Rod, you talk to the microphone a little bit.
I came from two parents that were conservative and really tough conservative. And you were trained to be tough all the time, no matter what the circumstances were. You couldn't show weakness. You couldn't cry. You had to get up, get going. I remember when I first became diabetic, I came home, I sat at my parents' kitchen table. What did the doctor say? He says, I'm diabetic. And I looked at both of them. I started to cry. I said, that's it. My mother said, it's okay to cry. Why are you crying? Then I turned and looked at my father and he said, diabetic, so what? What are you crying for?
Wow.
Get yourself together, get back on the horse and get going. So I was trained to not to really show emotion. Because even like today, I'll tell it. If I'm really emotional, I'm not married, but I can still get in my car and go to a park or something, do my crying there. You know, I don't want anybody to see my weakness. I didn't want my younger brothers to see my weakness. I didn't want my sisters to see my weakness. Because I was looked upon as the strong person in the family. So I trained myself not to show it. I trained myself not to show it at work. And to carry myself a certain way with the media. I trained myself not to let them see that weakness. I always had to come off looking strong. And that's not good. There should be somebody you go talk to, be a professional, or your parents. That's a lot of weight to carry, especially for the kids today. I tell the kids today, if you got a problem, come talk to me. You know, because I didn't like that feeling. You know? But then my parents grew up in that era. It was really tough for them. And you can't be weak. As the old saying, for a black man, you gotta be twice as good. So I had to come off strong, even act strong when I wasn't. And I think that's not good for anybody, male, female, black or white. I think we should. If I had kids today, I'd tell them totally different. You can talk to me. Let's talk about it. let's go get you some help if I have to. In the black community, having such a long past of being kicked around, degraded, I think we're put in a position where you had to always be strong, or act like you were strong. Couldn't show weakness. I think today it's better because you have more outlets now. People speaking on the subject, you see it on their commercials, TV. I have a couple of siblings that see therapists. And yesterday that wasn't thought of. You had what's the old saying is? Pick up your bootstraps and get going. But you carry that. You don't realize that you carry that. And you can carry it into a relationship, and before you know it, you don't know what happened. So, I think in today's era, as a black man, teach the younger kids today, if you have a problem, you want to talk about something, let's talk about it.
Thank you. And that sheds light on some of the themes throughout the book. Generational trauma, things that happen, when you look at even how the father's role in the book and the son's role in the book as well. And I just want to go through a couple things that you mentioned when you were sharing just now. You said, I train myself not to show it. It is a lot of weight to carry. I didn't want nobody to see my weaknesses. I didn't want anyone to see my weaknesses. So Lee, directing this question back to you. What messages about masculinity do black men receive in their families based on your perspective, being born in Louisiana, in a deeper part of the South, families, communities, and media? And how do these messages impact their emotional well-being based off of your perspective?
Well, talking about with families and everything, well, my parents were a little more open. They were still conservative in a way. In a way where I could still go talk to them about how I'm feeling, but at the same time, it's like they don't want anything to be out of the house.
Say that again, they don't want it?
They didn't want anything to be out of the house. Which means if you were feeling something outside the house, you come back and you tell them in the house. Don't let
the microphone a little closer, please. Yeah, thank you.
Basically, don't let it get out of the house. Don't let other family members know. Don't let anyone know. Because even though it was a community, you don't let anyone know your business. That's basically all it was. You don't let anyone know your business. And the fact is, as mostly the male's role, I was mostly taught to just push things down for most of the way, because also had the added pressure of being not only the oldest of my siblings, but also really the oldest out of basically my generation between my cousins and me. So I had to be that rock, really that emotional rock, to where I had to take on things that when they ever come to me. And going back out into community, there's also different. There's also you have to be more emotionally stable in the community, because you just act up just one time, and it gets back, it's game over. And that's just with anything, especially also with the media, because everybody's seen the media today. Every time there's a black person that's on the news is for something like kidnapping or murder or something. There's never really anything about when a black child goes missing, or why if someone ran away. That's just stuff that just doesn't get talked about. So it's like that goes back to the whole the family dynamics with black families, that you basically keep it in the house. And so with the community, going back to the community again, with the whole emotional well-being, is that you're taught to be strong outside, And just I think the same sentiment is don't let them know your weakness. Which I mean, there are times when you just have those hard days, and you just want to just go in your room and just cry. That's typically what happens. But I think it has gotten better, over the last few years, especially how like there's even more people just having these discussions about just being open, just being more emotional about it, and just talking about your feelings. Because that's just something that just wasn't really there when I was a kid, and especially also when you go out as well. Because there's also the added factor of parents' reputation, especially with black families. And the fact is, I was a teacher's kid, so I had the extra layer of having to be good. But yeah, or otherwise, teachers be able to call and just email my mom, and that's all three of my lives right there.
Oh, boy.
So going back to what Lee just said, he said, don't let anyone know your what? Business. He said, don't let them know your what? Your weakness. I was taught to suppress my what? My thoughts. So when I think about suppressing thoughts, and sometimes we hear in conversations, you need to man up. You need to man up. You need to get it together, boy. And throughout the book, Don't Cry For Me, Dr. Daniel Black talked about that throughout the book, about what he heard from his father throughout the book, and how that plays such a role on him as a man later on. So my next question is directed to James, Marvin, and Rod. When we talk about manning up, have you ever experienced or witnessed being told to man up? And how did that moment affect you in the long run? James, I see you looking ready right now. You look ready like
yeah, because I'll tell somebody to rub some dirt in it real quick. I'm going to be real. I'm listening to people, and I see that I'm probably the bully at the table. Yeah, but it's a total mind trip, guys. And when they tell you to man up, or somebody's saying that, there's something going on. And I'll just explain it to the point of, all right, let's say bills have to be paid. Now, I felt this father, because when he said, oh, it's just diabetes, I know people, look, I know people all over this neighborhood. Right now I got diabetes, won't even go to the hospital, won't get medication. I know them. And this is your complaint? Get to work. And that coldness right there is, I understand you have a problem, and I really would love to concentrate on your problem, but you gotta get a roof over your head and clothes on the kid's back, food on the table. One of these things is gonna outweigh the other. So we can sit here and have this great conversation about this. You get to work. You see how hard that is? You tell somebody to rub some dirt in it? That's not nice. I just think there's a part of life where, man, there's a hard edge. I'm retired military, I'm sorry. Like, there's just a hard edge to it that comes out sometimes, and it just is what it is.
Take it away.
I know, Dr. Prince. He pointed right at me.
Life be life.
That's not my question.
That wasn't my question. I can jump in, but it's not my question.
Oh, he asked it, but I'm finished. Like,
Okay.
I feel like just manning up, like, it's very situational. It is very situational.
So Marvin,
I got stuff.
yeah, have you ever experienced a witness?
So, all this relates to American masculinity. And while I think that man up mentality, we have it in the black community, but I think it's an American thing. Many of us did not have parenting. My ancestors perhaps didn't have as much parenting from their own father, and we haven't learned, like, if you're an Italian American or Irish American, you may have learned parenting styles from generations of parents that you can identify. I think a lot of us learned about parenting and masculinity the way maybe white culture learned about black culture through media and TV. I'm 60. I grew up watching John Wayne and Dirty Harry and Charlie Bronson and all of those ultra macho figures that would bend a woman over and smack her in the butt and say, or slap her, calm down. And so that man up to me, I have a different, I was the crybaby in the family. And I was called the crybaby. And I was, in fact, the kid who cried a lot because I felt a lot. What I've learned, though, is that have the feeling, now go get the job done. So cry, get a good cry, or cry as you move along. And I'll say this last thing, when my little girl, I only have one kid, but when my little girl played soccer and she fell and scratched her knee, she looked over to see my reaction and she's crying. I say, cry and run. Cry and run. You can still get the job done. Cry, but get back to the ball. And so my thing is, I'm gonna feel stuff along the way, but I still got stuff to do. And I may take some time out. It's cleansing for me. By the time I get a good cry out, now I'm ready to fight. You ready? Okay, I got my cry out, and I'm like him. I might have to do it in private, right? Keep your business at home. But yeah.
I like what you just said, Marvin. You said cry and run. Cry and run.
I don't mean run away crying.
I know, right? but
cry and do the work.
But it was a good point. And that leads me to the next question on forgiveness. Because the reality is, as men, and as black men, dealing with, the trauma, the generational trauma, we look at our fathers, things that have been passed down from one generation to the next generation. And as we get older, later on in life, we have to deal with, are we going to forgive or are we going to harbor all that negative energy? Kind of like what Dr. Daniel Black also alluded to in his book as well, writing that letter back to his father. So my next question goes to Rod and Dr. Prince in regards to forgiveness. What does true forgiveness really look like? Especially when someone is seeking it later on in life.
Well,
Rod.
I think it's, for me, it came through being a Christian. My father was in the military, was my stepfather. But he was the only one I knew as my father.
Yeah.
My maternal father, I didn't develop a relationship probably till after college. And I heard about some of the things he did. Coming home and the lights would be off in Philadelphia. What's going on? No food in the cabinets. Just taking the money and going gambling. I told him, when I got older, he called me at home and asked to speak to me. And I said, when I see you, I'm gonna kick your teeth.
Jeez. Say that one more time, please.
I said, when I see you, I'm gonna kick your teeth.
When I see you, I'm going to kick your what? Teeth out.
My mother heard that. And after I hung up the phone, she said, listen. The Bible says, honor your parents. It didn't say you had to love them. honor me. Your days will be long. So I thought about it and I prayed about it. And I called him later on, a few days later. And I said to him, the next time I see you, I'm going to pray with you.
This is like church, y'all. Thank you, sorry, excuse me.
So I told him the next time I see you, I'm going to pray with you.
Wow.
And I met him again. He came up here to go play golf at the Metoyer golf course. This was a yearly thing. I didn't know about that. He says, my bus gets off at the hotel. He'll meet me there. So I saw him. Came over with a set of golf clubs. I said, you going golfing? He said, no, these are for you, but I'm going golfing, but these are for you. I said, oh, appreciate that. And I prayed with him, standing right there. So, through being a Christian, that helped me to forgive. Because I didn't think through slavery, slave masters, we have to learn to forgive. And it's hard, but we have to. That doesn't mean that you don't protest it. That means that you don't speak about it, educate about it. But you have to learn to forgive. Because if you don't forgive, you're going to carry it around with you forever. So that taught me to learn to forgive. You know, you can't carry things around with you forever.
You can't carry things around with you for what? Forever. So, Dr. Prince, what does true forgiveness mean to you? Thank you.
That's a loaded question. I almost think that I need to like stand and walk for this particular piece, but I'm gonna stay seated. I think sometimes when we say forgiveness, it's a quick fix to things, right? I look at it as a dyadic experience, if you will. There's forgiveness and then there's restoration. Forgiveness is what I do for me. But everyone that I forgive, I don't restore. Get that one more time, because I didn't bless you quite right. Forgiveness is something I do for me. But not everyone that I forgive, I restore. Because sometimes the thing that happens, you do not want to put a person in that space to do that to you again. But you also don't want to remain in that same headspace of the thing that happened to you. So you forgive, right? Because that's for you. But you don't often, for me, and just this is me, not every time that forgiveness happens, restoration happens at the same time. I can forgive you and not mess with you anymore. You see what I'm saying? And sometimes we think that because you've forgiven a person, that they have to now occupy the same space in your life that they did before. You don't have to do that. That's a different form of restoration. I can forgive you, so I'm no longer in that same headspace. So every time I see you coming around, my whole mood isn't changed. Every time I see a vehicle that looked like the one that you drove, my whole day isn't affected. Every time I see someone comes in and they wear the same cologne or perfume that you used to wear, my whole day isn't thrown off. So that's forgiveness. That's for me. But restoration is kind of what that person happened, because sometimes with forgiveness, what then happens is a person or a situation can happen publicly, and the atrocity happens publicly, but the apology happens privately. I'm gonna do that again because I didn't bless you quite right again. See, the thing can happen publicly, but the apology happens privately. And you're like, you did something to me in front of everybody. Things that happen to me happen in front of everybody. But you don't come back in the same space with everybody to apologize. You want to take me to the side and say, hey, and this is how these apologies go. I'm sorry that you felt. Look, you know, one more time again. That didn't bless you quite right. I'm sorry that you felt that this thing. Not that I'm sorry for what I did. I'm sorry that the action that I did made you. I'm sorry that you felt some way because of the action that I did. Not that I did something wrong. Right? So in that same space, you can forgive because I no longer want to be in that same headspace. But restoration doesn't always have to happen the same way. And a lot of times with that, it comes this generational trauma, if you will. Because, so I'm Caribbean, right? And maybe a black thing as well. There's some things that you would have heard your parents say. My Haitian brother will get this part. I don't quite, when I say it, you're going to understand it. Giselle gets this too, and Lee. Lee go down. Explain to you why. There's some parents that, or some older folks that will not have you speak to another person. You have no idea why. And the reason they would say something like, my spirit just don't take it. And that makes no sense unless you had, something like, you have no idea what that means. And they'll be like, my spirit just don't take it. And that, no, you know what I'm saying? It just doesn't, no make any wing. Like it doesn't, it sounds like it doesn't quite fit. It don't fit right on you. And a lot of times this same feeling is something that happened, especially in small communities. There has been something that happened 3 generations ago.
Yeah.
And there was no forgiveness that happened there. Hence no restoration. And then as a result, that trauma that passed from one generation to the next. From that generation to the next. And now you have kids growing up being impacted by something that happened 3 generations ago that have no idea why. So that same thing, just like how diseases can be hereditary, so can hate. So can malice, so can trauma. It passes from one generation to the next. And the last thing I'd say about this is understanding some cultural fears. One of the things that wasn't on Mr. Booker's 25 questions was one of the things that happened, again, this is just me talking to or getting buying from some of my colleagues. Again, you definitely get this. Almost everybody here gets this. Traditionally, as black people, we do not trust medical professionals. It is not a thing that we do. And this is even pre-syphilis things that happen. We just don't trust it. And that's one. And two, coming from the Caribbean, or from my story, we also couldn't afford it. So one of the first things that we do is when someone gets sick is you find some tea. Yeah, you find some tea, or you'll masque tea. You know how that works.
Bay leaf
that
tea,
works
that's
for
right.
everything. That works for every single thing. So oftentimes, we don't have that trust in medical professionals. It's just not what we do. So it doesn't matter how strong the advice is, and it doesn't matter how we can have people in our families who's physicians have been practicing for years. And before
get
your
that tea.
grandmother or your abuela goes to the doctor, they will say,
You gotta get that tea.
They will tea.
That's
Like,
right.
they want tea first. Like, let me get this first before I go to seek any medical, because we're just not trusting of those things. So we see them all as systems. We see them all as systems. And as long as we didn't have some part of it, it's part of that trauma that happened from one generation to the next. So I would say that the big piece of me is there is forgiveness and then there's restoration. The two things are not the same.
Right.
You forgive for yourself, but you choose who you restore.
So Dr. Prince just said, you forgive for who? Yourself. But you choose to what? Restore. And all of us deal with trauma, especially when we look at relationships, right? Relationships with a father, sometimes your mom, whatever the situation is. But looking at Dr. Daniel Black's book, Don't Cry for Me, it's his relationship with his father. And this next question will go directly to Marvin and Lee. And in regards to when you're looking at that father and son relationship, how do you think the relationship between black fathers and their sons has changed over time, from one generation to the next. Because I know you, Marvin, you know, as you said before within our panel tonight, I'm 60 years old. And looking at your father and the relationship you have with your dad, how have things changed through generations from what you have observed in this time that you have been on this planet?
I think for me, as a black father, I'm seeing it across fatherhood in America in general. I think, at least in the circles where I am, that I see fathers being affectionate with their sons and daughters. I see it way more now than I ever saw it with any father on TV, in the neighborhood, or anywhere. Nothing gives me more joy than to see an older black man embrace or kiss his adult son, and to see a father embrace or kiss on the forehead his son, or just be affectionate. I would give cash money. I would give Musk kind of money. There's a better use. There's a better use for it. But no, I'm believing that the kind of toxic masculinity that we experienced in the years when I was young, I think is flipped, and in some ways it's gone really, really far. But I think it'll land somewhere, hopefully in the middle, where we young men can be young men, but that doesn't mean that they can't be affectionate. It didn't mean that boys can't be affectionate with their friends. I grew up on the wrestling team, and you don't get any closer to dudes than when you're wrestling. But when the match is over, I mean, we're physical, and then you become an adult, and I don't have physicality with adult men anymore. And I don't mean in a sexual way. I just mean that aside from a two-dap hug, right? We do that. You gotta give them, you know, don't start rubbing me on the back. I ain't down with that. No, I ain't down with it. But and if you are, it's cool. But I think that I appreciate seeing fathers and sons talking and relating and communicating and teaching, and kid falls down on the basketball court. He's getting a little bit more now than just man up. He's getting what are you feeling? All right, well, talk about that later. Let's get back out there. You know, so I appreciate that.
Thank you. So Lee, you know, the question directed to you as well in regards to your relationship, you know, with your father, and do you think things have changed over time based on what you have observed from your father with his father and your grandfather, and how has your relationship been with your dad?
I say things definitely have changed over time, because my grandfather was in the military, and so that's the they move around a lot. But whenever my grandfather had to go to Fort Polk, and he was sending my dad and my uncle to go to an aunt. I forget which aunt, where at. That thing like that was a little bit of an absentee right there. Then also, like, my dad also had to grow up real quick, because by the time my dad got to college, and while in college, that's when my grandparents got a divorce. And so he had to drop out of college because there's the trauma for that. And that's thing, he didn't even go back till, he just got his bachelor's degree a few years ago.
Congratulations.
That's thing, but I see it today with me that, like, well, not just me, but all my siblings, that he encourages all of us, especially when we go out and do stuff. I mean, he's always there there when for a lot of us sporting stuff, and he's usually one that travels with us for all of us sporting stuff. Because when I was younger, I did a lot of Taekwondo tournaments, and usually it would just be me and my dad. It'd just be just two of us that would go on the trip, that would go where I could meet, especially if it wasn't a Texas one, but the whole family was able to come. And then that would just be time for us to bond everything, then come back. And then I see it also with my brother, especially with also in the last few years since my mom had passed, and it was my brother's senior year in high school, and that my dad had to step up and do more of the educational, come back in and do a lot of the educational, because my mom handled more of that. And I see that, and like I basically almost talk to my dad just about almost every day, just to check in on him, just to see him. Like that's something that like that's never really been done with my grandfather and him a whole lot of times. They only talk maybe like once every few weeks, but that kind of got somewhat more frequent when my grandfather was basically going through hospice. Yeah, so I think like it really improved compared to before.
Thank you. And Lee, thank you so much for being vulnerable and opening up. Thank you very much. So in regards to, when we talk about like being a man, right? And this leads me to my last question before we do our closing statement here. Throughout the book, sexuality is a theme that's throughout the book. Okay, and I wasn't going to stay away from this question. Okay, all right, because this is something that's a major theme throughout the book. And when I think about extraordinary black men in history, there are two black men that come to mind in regards to their sexuality. They were always very open about their sexuality. That's James Baldwin, one of the greatest writers of the 20th century. Yep. And we also know Bayard Rustin, who was a great organizer during the Civil Rights Movement. And he was also openly gay and open about his sexuality as well. And going back to what Marvin said earlier, and as we know, we always have that idea of what masculinity is, right? And we see that throughout within our community. Don't get too close to me, dude. Hey, how you doing? Okay? I don't have the physicality, we're gonna just not too close, but I don't want to show too much. Being a man. So my question for any one of you on the panel, okay, why do you think homosexuality is such a taboo phenomenon, concept, right, within our community, and still is to this day? It's something like, as J.L. King wrote a book a few years ago, The Brothers on the Down Low, right? And it's something that we know exists within our community. And Dr. Daniel Black also, expanded on that as well and talked about that throughout his book. That's a theme throughout the book. Coming to terms with his sexuality and having that conversation with his father. So, any one of you, in regards to that, why do you think that is such a topic, a theme that we still deal with within our community today?
I think we'll continue to deal with it because it's tied to our spirituality. Like, there is a clear-cut definition, and you find it in the book. And you find it in the book where they start talking about it. So when I think about it, I understand that all of a sudden we have to have these conversations. And you have to all of a sudden start saying, okay, how does this work for you in this space, and in this space, and in this space? And then how do you continue to talk to people? And for me, it has been a interesting thing, because I was stationed in Oakland right when they started the votes for marriage for everyone. And literally, my thought was, because of my relationship with God, that's not for me. How I grew up, it was, you better not. And you could see those lines and people hide certain things. But to solve the problem, I think you have to let everyone be themselves. I have to let you be you, you have to let me be me, and I have to understand that whatever you do, that's what you do. And then I have to judge you. Once again, I'm gonna go by the actions of what I feel should happen. And that's just for me, but I can't then turn around and then judge you and say, oh, this is what's going on and it's wrong. Because I still have to have that conversation. There should never be anything that shuts down communication. And that's what it comes down to. Like, this is who you are, this is how you feel, whether you voted this way, that way, Democrat, like, it's the things that shut down communication. And you just gotta get back to, once again, letting everybody be who they are and be their authentic self. Because those are the things that are hidden, like, oh, this is who you are, don't do that. And I think you've heard it, like, you gotta hide this, I feel this way, so I gotta hide this. Or this person is this way, so we don't talk about this out on the street. It's just gotta be a more open conversation.
Much more open conversation. When you think about same-sex marriage, it didn't become legal until 10 years ago, 2015. So, and even if you just take a look outside of even the black community, it's something that, you know, as a nation, we didn't really come to terms with and recognize completely until 2015. So is there anyone else who would like to, Marvin?
Yeah.
Please.
So I think in the black community, I think most of our history about matters like that come through the Christian faith and what is in the scripture. That said, there's a lot of things in scripture, but somewhere along the way, a different kind of shame has been attached to homosexuality or anything around gender and those kinds of things. And I know what I believe and I know what the scriptures say, but the scriptures say a lot about a lot of things. And so, but I think in black communities, I think there were a lot of men, probably women too, were on the quote unquote down low because of the shame. And what's interesting, I remember as a kid, I knew who all the gay kids were anyway. I mean, they didn't have to say it, you just knew. So there was that, and then I think also, there's a different kind of shame in the general public around that I think is based in biblical teaching, but is skewed because scriptures say we should not be a slave to anything. So I remember hearing, you shouldn't smoke because it's addicted. Well, America is addicted to sugar. It's killing people way more than cigarettes ever did. Americans are addicted to online media. People are addicted to pornography. We don't put the same kind of shame around some of these other things that we put on that, and I think that goes to the kind of toxic masculinity that I don't want your gay to rub off on me. I don't want your feminine tendencies to rub off on my kid or to rub off. And I think when parents are being the parents that God designed them to be, nobody's gonna influence your kid to be this or be that.
Well said. Thank you. So in closing, gentlemen, in closing, if each one of you, just for 20 seconds, can share a statement or a quote in regards to something you would like to leave the audience tonight with. All right, I'll wait. Rob, start with you.
For myself, I hope that this world gets better. I hope the political arena, I hope it gets better. Hope, kids today read more books, get off the phone. I just think we ought to share more love than hate. Just going back to our last statement, homosexuality
Yeah,
thing.
absolutely.
It's not my job to judge it.
That's right. That's right.
God said he's a judge.
That's right.
So, I'll let him take care of it.
That's right.
Right.
Mhm.
I guess we got enough stress.
Mhm.
So,
Well said. Thank you, Rob. Thank you. Lee Metoyer.
I'll probably leave out with this. Wisdom is a circle. What you receive, you must give back.
Mm.
And so what we've done with this discussion tonight, and especially also what you have learned, teach it to others, as well as learn from others as well.
And Mr. Hodge.
I'll give you two things. Like the first one, it's just going to be when you're feeling down and out, just know, right where you are enough. You are enough. You're right where God asked you to be. That's my belief.
Mm.
And then second is just when you're feeling like you're just too high, or someone thinks they're higher than you, just remember, memento mori. We're going to die. Enjoy life. It's a whole banquet. There's a whole lot of suckers out there starving themselves. Don't be one.
Mm. And Dr. Derval Prince.
I have like four things, clearly. One of the discussions we spoke about was the impact of fathers, and I think we have this space where fathers have so wanted to be the friends of their kids that they've forgotten how to be fathers of their kids. You need to be a father first before you could be the friend. We're dealing with a generation that's lost so much structure. As soon as something gets difficult, we're ready to stop. We've lost a lot of that grit. So I'd say that's one. We need fathers to be fathers first, and then be that friend after. Second one is fear should not lead to immobility. You're afraid of something, okay. There's someone that I met over the past couple months. He's a bit acerbic, but even in all of his speeches, one of the things he likes to say is, and so what? And so what? Okay, this happened to you, okay, and so what? You gonna let that stop you from doing everything else that you need to do? Yeah, it happened. You're gonna sit, exactly, cry and run.
Don't run and cry.
Don't run and cry. The next thing is, we've all heard the saying, it takes a village to raise a child. The problem is that we have a world that's filled with so much child men and child women that needs to be villaged themselves. It's almost an epidemic. You know what I'm saying? That's bars. No, it's crazy. You know, when it's just a crazy world that we live in, and even if you don't have the kids, you still need to be that uncle. You still need to be that aunt. But we have this space where there is no village because everyone are grown children. And y'all need to fix that collectively. My last thing is whatever legacy you think you want to leave, you need to start that journey now. It's always easy to think about the things that has happened and all that kind of wonderful stuff, but think about the legacy you want to leave. When your clock runs out and you've passed on, what legacy do you want to leave? Changes don't always happen in your generation, but it doesn't mean that you get to be complicit. You still need to impact some action.
Wow, well said. And Mr. Marvin Espy.
never thought there'd be an occasion where I would quote Jane Fonda. I watched a portion of the SAG Awards, and she spoke beautifully. And from I think in her 80s, I think. Yeah. The tripwire has already been tripped. And I think there's a short amount of time, a very finite amount of time, by which we have to stop the momentum of this bond that's already, the trigger's already been pulled. And I fear that with a leadership that, I know I'm going to places, but a leadership that is not playing by the rule book that we've been accustomed to, and who appears to be 6 to 8 years ahead of us planning-wise, we gotta decide what kind of a world we wanna live in and act yesterday. I fear that by the time, or I say, sum it up this way, in my lifetime, I've been in maybe 3 or 4 legitimate scuffles, fights. None since 1983. But I always feel prepared. And I think most guys, if you're like me, when I walk in the room, I kind of survey the land. And when I walk up to the cashier, there's 4 guys there. In my mind, I'm kind of sizing up. It's not even a military thing.
Keep speaking.
And I don't enjoy the idea of having to fight. I feel like I'm always prepared. And I would teach, don't get in a fight. The situation as we're in now, we are already in the fight. The fight has already been started. It's in Ukraine, it's here on our territory, it's with immigrants in cages, it's with whatever's happening at Guantanamo Bay, it's DEI and slashes, and it's only a matter of time before you hear something outside your door, and it's troops. And I always feel like, well, 8 years ago, I wanted to sound the alarm, but I don't look crazy. No, let's just chill. You're exaggerating. But I think today, there is no exaggeration. We have a leadership now that has expressed verbally, boldly, brazenly, that I don't have to answer to the judicial system that runs the military. I don't have to be accountable to them. And we are already, the click, click, click that you hear as a roller coaster is going to that first hill, the clicks already stopped. We're at the top of the hill, teetering, and it's only a matter of time. And I don't know what that means for us individually. Yes, I know it means prayer. In my life, in my world, I know it means galvanizing relationships. I know it means strengthening my community. But the fight is on. I think that we've already taken several blows, and we're still preparing for where my boxing was. So I think it's time to. Sorry, that wasn't encouraging.
No.
Thank you, Mr. Marshall.
Thanks.
So in closing, we're gonna have a recap from Mr. Watson Joseph, who's been taking notes. just to kind of go through this conversation with us all within a minute. Okay? Let's get on Mr. Watson Joseph. Round of applause, everyone. Appreciate it.
First of all, guys, thank you so much. This was definitely a powerful panel for sure. I definitely learned so much from you guys, like so much wisdom in the room. And you know, you guys are definitely the pioneers to, you know, the world that we have today. And you know, just hearing from you guys all, you know, my thing is, I just wanted to, you know, just recap the thing. And you know, what really stood out to me is fathers are more loving to their children than they ever were. And you know, that stuck out to me because I'm like, you know, me and my father, we didn't really have the best relationship when I first came to America. But as time passed, as time kept going, you know, we actually established a relationship where we do talk every day now. Like, you know, he parented me, and you know, now it's time to be my friend, right? But he's still a father figure to me. At the end of the day, I will always respect my father. I will always look at him as the man that, you know, that's always been in my life personally. So that's something that, you know, you guys, I appreciate it for sharing that for sure. Another thing that stood out to me was ships stay in the harbor, but that's not what it was made for. That was powerful. And that to me represents each and every single one of you here has a purpose, and each and every single one of you were built for a purpose. So don't take that for granted. Don't let your voice be silenced, but you know, inherit that and utilize the way that you were actually meant to be. Use that to your advantage, because that's what's gonna make our world a better tomorrow, right? Because each and every single one of us, if we stay silent, nothing moves. But this is where we all have to come together. We all have to say, you know what? Instead of sitting around and letting things happen, let me make things happen. And this is where, you know, your point actually, you know, just listening to you at the end, I'm like, you know, like although all this thing is happening, we still have to be the ones that have faith. We still have to go back and tap into that Martin Luther King Jr. power. We still have to go back and say, you know what, there is a lot of examples that's already happened. History repeats itself, but are we gonna allow history to fold us in this generation that we're in? And the answer to me is a no. We can't let this happen. So, you know, my thing to you guys is, be the change that you want to see in the world, and let's continue to unite together.
Right.
Right? Well, thank you very much, Mr. Watson Joseph. Let's give him another round of applause. So what I need from all of you at this moment, I need everyone to stand.